Clark Kent, the normal everyday personality of superhero and Kryptonian refugee alien Kal-El. Superman has been on my mind a lot. From the way his background as a climate change refugee and a Jewish allegory have been central to his character, yet so deeply erased from most mainstream depictions of him. Because of his powers as Superman and his general clean-cut Boy Scout image, there's a tendency to take figures like him, Steve Rogers, Captain America, and Scott Summers' Cyclops and paint them as pseudo-fascist good old boys. Yet when we look deeper at all these figures, they are more complicated than that. But for the sake of brevity, we are going to focus on Clark Kent and how he is the way Kal-El passes for human. I've been on the record about how much I hate the scene in Kill Bill Volume 2 where the titular villain, Bill, explains that Clark Kent is Superman's critique on the whole human race.
Clark Kent is how Superman views us. And what are the characteristics of Clark Kent? He's weak. He's unsure of himself. He's a coward. Clark Kent is Superman's critique on the whole human race.
Blah. This is a very cynical white male idea of Clark Kent because it sees Superman's through the lens of a traditional white male Anglo-Saxon power. And that's just not at the root of who Superman is. Superman was created by writer Jerry Siegel and artist Joe Shuster. Both were first-generation Jewish immigrant men. Siegel's family fled anti-Semitism in Lithuania, while Shuster's mother and father immigrated from the Netherlands and Ukraine. The Jewish refugee and immigrant experiences are rooted in Superman, from the Moses to the then immigrant experiences of assimilation and belief in the American dream. Siegel and Shuster, sons of Jewish immigrants, recognized and believed in this economic system, and Superman was designed to be its ultimate supporter. And by economic system, they mean America and all its capitalistic glory. It was into this milieu that Siegel and Shuster injected Superman in 1938, a man who had been moved from his home planet of Krypton and soon became the United States' most loyal and powerful immigrant, built specifically to conform to Western cultural norms while remaining capable of physically handling the technological progressions that were changing our society. Cultural assimilation was a common way of proving Americanness by new immigrants who came to America. Cultural assimilation is essentially removing your individual trappings and whatever the main look of your culture is and assuming and assimilating and blending in essentially to the dominant culture. For years, you would hear America get called a melting pot, a blending of all of these cultures together into one very bland brown American stew. But that meant being more homogeneous, of conforming to fit the majority rather than keep what makes you unique. For Jewish American and Canadian families like the Siegels and the Schusters, assimilation was the way in which to become successful in America. And for many Jewish immigrants, this was what was being preached to them as the way to get ahead in their new countries. To quote from PBS's Jewish Americans by David Grubin, though Jewish Americans immigrated from many nations, once they were in the United States, there was a concerted effort to negotiate their place without sacrificing their Jewish identity. Many went to English classes at night, adopting American dress and customs. Ultimately, they were learning to fit in, to think like Americans, and to be American. In the early 20th century, Abraham Kahane, editor of the Jewish Daily Forward, a Yiddish language newspaper, offered advice and encouragement to a generation of Jewish immigrants. His words assisted newcomers to assimilate and inform themselves about the issues of the day. It also matters that Superman was created before the Holocaust, and while there's always been anti-Jewish sentiment in Europe, the history of it in the Americas is overall less egregious until post-World War I. And I think it's also important to note that at the time that Superman really starts doing the whole fighting Hitler, anti-Nazi rhetoric, this is before the first rumors were coming out about the concentration camps. American anti-Semitism post-World War I inspired quotas restricting Jewish students from attending institutions of higher learning despite their qualifications, and also led to their exclusion from certain universities, neighborhoods, hotels, and clubs. Harvard, Yale, Princeton, and other institutions of higher learning limited the enrollment of Jews to discourage the rise of anti-Semitism. Seems like the wrong Way to go. Prominent figures also came forward. Henry Ford, known for his anti-Semitism, published a newspaper in the 1920s in Dearborn, Michigan called The Dearborn that was riddled with anti-Semitic tropes and propaganda. He believed Jewish people sought to control the world by commerce and exchange, beliefs which were praised by Hitler's Trieste Mein Kampf. So Superman is created right during this very pivotal moment in anti-Semitism within the United States. It's also important to understand that when we talk about Superman and his transformations over the years, that DC really screwed over the creators in a long history of big comic companies screwing over creators. In 1946, near the end of their 10-year contract to produce Superman stories, Siegel and Shuster sued Detective Comics Inc. to have their contract annulled and regain their rights of Superman. The following year, the New York State Supreme Court ruled that the publisher had validly purchased the rights to Superman when it bought the first Superman story, saying that the duo had, quote, transferred to Detective Comics Inc. all of their rights in and to the comic strip Superman, including name, titles, characters, and conception. So basically, right at the time where Superman's Jewish identity was most necessary and his New Deal dynamics, they were stripped due to the creative oversight. And fun fact, when you look at the original people responsible for laying down DC's foundations, Malcolm Wheeler Johnson, Jerry Siegel, Joe Shuster, Bob Kane, Bill Finger, Sheldon Mayer, and Garner Fox, all except for Fox and Wheeler Johnson are Jewish. And both Batman and Superman are characters who on the surface have all the trappings of two sides of traditional white Americanness, but deal with something much deeper psychologically about their responsibility and duty to their family. And also a lot of guilt. So there's that. And that leads us back to passing. Passing, if you haven't seen my Nebula video, is the ability of a person to be regarded as a member of an identity group or category such as racial identity, ethnicity, caste, etc., that is different from their own. So it is basically you assuming the identity of another racial or social group, usually the dominant one, for a myriad of reasons. Before the age of the blackfish, where people were pretending to be black for clout online, this was mostly done as a way of self-preservation or self-protection. Light-skinned black person, if they could, would try to pass as white because being white enabled them to all of the rights that the Constitution was supposed to give everybody, but they weren't thinking about everybody when they wrote it. And you would see Black, Asian, and Latino people pretending to be white, or in certain cases even whiter. Even you had Romani Spanish actress Rita Hayworth, aka birth name Margarita Carmen Cancino, had to anglicize herself to make her even more white. But passing isn't just looking the part. You have to perform whiteness, which is what Clark Kent does. He performs normalcy. He performs humanity. Clark Kent is everything you'd expect in a sort of conservative, salt of the earth man from Kansas to be. He develops this very passive, introverted personality with very, Midwestern mannerisms. He gives himself a higher pitched voice depending on which interpretations of the comics that you've seen.
Can you imagine a better world, Kent? That's all I've ever asked. In a world without Superman, the unattainable Lois Lane might have noticed good old Clark pining away in the corner.
You keep talking about me, but I'm here to interview you.
I'm just saying, a strapping farm boy with brains, integrity, and no discernible style of his own. You're a prize catch for a cynical city girl.
And he'll wear these very bland colored business suits with a red necktie, the black glasses, and the combed back hair. So he's basically performing like single white man drag, It's like the category is conservative RNC member, and Clark Kent would body it every time. He also, very notably, and something I found out through doing more reading, is that unlike a lot of other superhero identities at the time, he wasn't like some secretly wealthy landowner. He was just kind of like both the world's strongest man and a working stiff. Like, this was in the day where journalism actually, mattered to people. So in a lot of ways, when Siegel and Shuster made Superman, they made him with the promise of what America could be for somebody. And you can notice how this switch, this everyday man versus Superman, is more noticeable in the pre-40s comics. Superman's personality is a lot rougher and aggressive. He fights the government. He's against the military-industrial complex. He protects a woman from domestic violence. He's ready to punch people. Like, early Superman, everybody could get them hands. As explained in Superman, the Unauthorized Biography, quote, in his first adventure, Superman didn't have much in common with the, quote, big blue Boy Scout who has become enshrined in the collective cultural memory by television and film. He was a tough-talking, two-fisted bruiser who was quick with a smirk and a sarcastic quip. He was impatient, given to anger, and prone to violence. He was a bully to bullies and a reckless one. He was, in fact, kind of a jerk, and he stayed that way for a while. I mean, iconic, groundbreaking, unique, amazing, never been seen before. Now allow me to overuse my lit theory brain to talk about the very easy bargain bin level symbolism of Superman's costume, this loud, expressive, bright, vibrant costume being underneath his conservative drag, you know. It's very explicitly queer, that loud, vibrant, tights, you know, bodybuilder aesthetic underneath this very put together thing. And you walk out in that put together look, but inside, right behind the surface, is this loud, proud Kryptonian serve. And that's what makes comics interesting. And that's why comics are queer, guys. That's why it's for everyone, the marginalized especially. Like, it's a genre for us. It's just been co-opted. Don't let them co-opt it from you. Anyone can enjoy comics. And just going back to the immigrant perspective, for many immigrant families, this respectability uniform is one that they not only have, but also expect their children to do so as well. So for Clark, part of why he puts on this performance is for his family, is to protect others, because he can protect himself, but it is also important for him to maintain a certain respectability for his family, which, relatable. Clark Kent in Superman's duality allows the character to play both ends, fight for justice with his pen, and when that doesn't work, to become somebody who can make change happen if need be. It wasn't until the war began that Superman became a symbol of that American war effort and started punching Nazis, and because of that, he would get toned down, because now they didn't want the, FDR New Deal protecting the worker. Now they needed a Superman who could live up to the exemplary military might of the World War II American soldier. When Bill Finger and Wayne Boring, terrible name for a person, I'm so sorry, Mr. Wayne, took over Superman, they would continue to do their best to make sure that, Superman would sit up against the Klan, that he would speak up against racism. But under the direction of Finger and Boring, Superman would become to be even more of this pinnacle of physical form. That's where he got his broader chest, tighter little waist. He very much got transformed into even more of an ubermensch. During the war, Superman did get to manhandle Hitler in a way that had SS papers screaming, "Superman is a Jew," and it's just like, yeah, yes he is, guys. We see Superman braving barrages of bullets as he descends on the Siegfried line of forts and bunkers along Germany's western border. The Nazis claim the West Wall is invulnerable. Well, here's where I found out. Ties the gun barrels into knots and rips the cement structures apart with his bare hands. "Come and get him," he shouts to the waiting French forces before heading deeper into Germany. Warplanes engage him, but he makes short work of them and crashes through the ceiling of Hitler's mountain retreat. "Kill the swine," the Fuhrer shrieks. "Don't let him touch me." Yet touch Hitler Superman does, grabbing him by the neck and lifting him into the air. "I'd like to land a strictly non-Aryan sock on your jaw, but there's no time for that." And then, as he has done with so many petty crooks before, Superman leaps into the sky, carrying a screaming Adolf Hitler behind him like a bag of garbage. Superman, and by extension Clark Kent, represents the ability for people to move forward with their lives and to live this sort of duality and navigate complicated lives. However, in the world that Schuster and Siegler are writing this on, you can only do that by moving forward and trying even more to assimilate and move beyond the sins of the past. And because with passing, the past is dangerous because it's what can out you, that leads to what is so symbolic about kryptonite. Siegel and Schuster had created the Man of Steel as the ultimate immigrant, the personification of the promise America represented to them. His abilities are metaphors for limitless potential and opportunity, for new horizons stretched out before us, the American way. It seems fitting then that the only thing capable of harming him would be a reminder of the old world he left behind, a past that is irrevocably gone. Only the past, our past, can hurt us. And that's why kryptonite, this remaining green substance of his home, is his one dangerous thing. It is just like in the movie Passing, as I bring up on my Nebula video, that's Irene and Claire meeting. Irene is the lure of blackness. And once you have black people around you, when you are around your community, it's harder and harder to pass, especially when you're only passing for survival. And in many ways, Clark is doing that, not simply because he wants to, but because he has to. Because how can he have a normal life, a free life, if he's always having to be this person everyone's after and trying to get something for? Clark Kent is him trying to get to be normal, or as normal as can be, and that means trying to be safe. And only as Clark Kent can he really be a safe everyday person. Siegel and Schuster's Superman Clark Kent is the ideal immigrant, the perfect example of American opportunity. But the trick is that Superman is already exceptional because of who he is fundamentally, his goodness. He has to hide that for his survival, just like kids who are taught by their parents not to speak their first language so they won't have accents and be teased, or are not fully taught their family history because of the trauma attached to it. Superman is someone constantly between two worlds, and one is forever lost to him until people from his community come, which is why Supergirl is such an important part of the Superman mythos, because she provides to him that connection, that community, and the importance of fostering that, because together they're not alone. When you create that community, when you are all striving to pass and survive together, it helps the loneliness wane. And in many ways, Clark Kent is a lonely character, not totally, but it is only half of who he is. And that's the tragic part of Clark Kent, that he has to cut off parts of himself, smother parts of himself to be whole. And I think that's why Supergirl ends with Kara coming out as Supergirl, because there is a time where you as a person need to choose to either fully pass and become the mask, or come out and be truly who you are. And it can be dangerous, but sometimes it is worth it.
Hello, National City. You know her as Kara Danvers, Catco's ace reporter and new editor-in-chief. But tonight, it is my great honor to introduce to you Supergirl.
Changing, 'cause I've built my life around you.
Clark Kent is the suit people wear because the real clothes, their real persona is just too bright, too different, too special, and still not understood. The only difference between Superman and us in that regard is that he is bulletproof and we are not.